Hi, I'm Danielle Dick, and I am the director of the Rutgers Addiction Research Center. And today I'm here with Sonia Rodrigues Marto, who is the Senior Director of School and Community-Based Programs at UBHC. Sonia's been such a wonderful partner in helping me understand the landscape of all kinds of exciting things that are going on with the schools across New Jersey since I joined Rutgers. So Sonia, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to talking a little bit more about the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. So maybe you could start off with that. Many of the people listening to this will be researchers, and we're obviously trying to break down the silos between researchers and our clinical and community partners. So if you can tell everyone a little bit more about what you do and the kinds of programs that you run.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we currently partner with school districts across the state. Currently, we're in 12 counties in New Jersey. And we provide a number of different services for school districts, both private and public, as well as some charter schools. And essentially, we place staff, our Rutgers staff, clinical staff, into schools to be able to provide tier 2 and tier 3 level of supports into school districts. Usually that includes individual, family, group therapy, sometimes psychiatric services, as well as programming for schools. That could mean parent workshops or professional development workshops for staff. We've also done a number of community events, events around wellness, and partnering with various agencies in the community to really talk about how to prevent a lot of the issues that we're now seeing post-COVID, which is, high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, suicidal ideation, self-injurious behavior. So we're really looking to educate school staff and the community, lots of parents and caregivers, about what are some of the warning signs, as well as how we can look at a prevention approach. So we provide all kinds of programming, regardless of the funding school districts have. We will oftentimes complete a needs assessment, talk to them about what services they would like to have in place, what are the challenges that they're having, and really work around their budget to create a program. In addition to that, we also have our very own out-of-district school for kindergarten through 12th grade students here on the Rutgers campus in Piscataway. It's a special education school for approximately 80 to 100 students who really have significant behavioral and educational challenges and need extensive support. So all of our students are special education students who need more than what their school community could provide them. So they come to us to receive those services, and the typical length of stay here could be anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
Sonia, every time we talk, I'm impressed by the absolute breadth and reach of the different types of programs that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit more about the process by which you might end up doing substance use prevention in one school, or an workshop for parents surrounding understanding and addressing anxiety in their kids in another school? Is it kind of tailored based on schools, needs and what they ask for? Or do you also kind of have a menu of different options that you provide schools? How does that process work?
Sure. And that's both, right? So we have a menu of services that we provide, and we'll say, here's what we've been providing. Here's what we're seeing in schools, middle schools or high schools in your area. Here's an event that we hosted in a nearby school and was well received. Would you like us to also offer this? Sometimes our workshops are recorded and can be placed on the school's website as an additional resource, or sometimes we can offer an in-person event. But a lot of times too, it's really just a lot of questions that we ask the school staff, conversations with teachers, conversations with administrators, and asking them. We've also done a number of surveys to be able to determine what services they're looking for. We have found that lots of schools obviously need to do a lot of programming specifically around substance abuse, but won't often come if its title includes something about substance abuse. So we've had to really be creative about how we offer our programming, and really talking about how to ensure the success of their child during challenging times, or what to look out for, how to support your child, and really kind of include all of the things that they should be on the lookout for.
That's such a fascinating observation. And it reminds me of a conversation I recently had with Jess Leahy, who's an author who wrote The Gift of Imperfection. And she then wrote several years later, maybe a decade later, The Addiction Inoculation. And she's a school teacher. And the first is really about, how sometimes by over-parenting our kids and being there to attempt to, rescue them if they forget their homework or this or that actually we can do them a disservice. And her second book really talked personally about her own struggles and her family history with substance use. And we awarded her the Research Society of Alcoholism Media Award for doing such a great job summarizing the research and bringing it to parents. And I mention it because she essentially wrote these 2-parent books. She does a lot of speaking. And she said, I'm really passionate about The Addiction Inoculation, which is my more recent book as well. I mean, she was featured in People magazine, but she said schools always want me to come talk about The Gift of Imperfection. And so she said they're scared off by the substance use piece. And so I have to kind of tuck it in to the other. And it sounds very similar to what you're saying about often, despite the fact that, we hear in the news about substance use problems, risky use in kids, overdoses. It's interesting to me as an addiction researcher that schools aren't more interested in wanting to get that kind of programming in. So I would love it if you could talk more about, where do you think this phenomenon is coming from? Why do you think that is?
That's very interesting, because I think you're right. Every school needs this, but there's reluctance on some of their parts to bring in some of this programming, because they don't want people to think that we have this problem here, right? And the reality is it's a problem in schools across the country, right? We know that it doesn't mean you live in a bad neighborhood or a poor community. It's just that when teens are stressed, that they turn to different things, including substances, to get through those times. And I always say it's important to just give them that information and to have the awareness. Here's signs and to look forward to, or to pay attention to. So I think it's just people don't want to acknowledge that this is something in their community. But I do think that that's shifting. I do think that since COVID, there's been a shift with parents, with administrators, with students wanting services, wanting to have presentations on all kinds of topics. So I do see that shifting. I feel like there's an openness to access services, and they don't feel like there's a stigma attached to it in the same way, and that we're kind of recognizing that everyone went through hardships, and that we're really just trying to recover from all of that.
Yes, I agree. I think that's been, if you can call it a silver lining, one of the positive things that has come from being on the other side of COVID is really this recognition that we need to pay attention to mental health globally, but also especially in our youth. So,
sure. And I would just add that another silver lining has been access to parents in ways that we didn't have access to. I know that some of our virtual workshops have had, hundreds of parents tune in. Whereas if we're offering something in person, we might be getting 20 to 30 parents show up. So, just the ability to kind of log in from wherever they are has really been such a great thing that has come from this. So we feel like we are accessing parents. We're able to give them this psychoeducation in ways that we were not able to pre-COVID.
Yes, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you raised that and that you're taking advantage of that too, in terms of ability to reach different audiences.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to have you talk a little bit more about ways that you can think of that researchers could partner with the really exciting school-based work that you're doing. Are there collaboration points that occur to you or that you would be excited about?
I would be so excited to partner with so many researchers for a number of reasons. We collect data, but we don't have a data analyst. And most of us are practitioners, right? Myself and my leadership team, we're first and foremost, we're clinicians. So we don't have the research background that's needed to be able to really fully develop our data collection process as well as our reports. So we do provide mid-year and year-end reports to each of the school districts that we partner with. So we collect some data typically around the number of sessions that we're having, number of programs, number of crisis assessments, students attending, parents attending. And then we do pre and post measures for students clinically. But we don't have the ability to really capture all of that data in the ways that we would like. So we would love to be able to look at some of the practices and how effective are our models. So we're talking a lot about training our staff in evidence-based practices. And there's really been a focus this year on training staff to utilize evidence-based practices. But we don't have anything in place currently to really look at, is this more effective than what we've been doing before? And how many sessions do we need to provide to really see, improvement? We also, on our leadership team, love to present at conferences and apply for grants, but we don't always have the structure in place to be able to have this data that shows, hey, what we're doing is effective. So we're very strong in the clinical component of our work, but we really need to strengthen the data collection, research, and publications. So that would be something that we would be very, very interested in partnering with researchers on. We have access to thousands of students, K-12 schools, school staff, administrators, teachers. So we would be very open to any kind of project or model that somebody might have an idea about, or partnering with funding to be able to implement certain programs in schools. So we would absolutely be excited about some of these potential opportunities.
I think that every time I talk to you, I get re-excited again about all of the opportunities, like you say, in terms of both implementation research, what's working, how well is the programming that you all are implementing working, how can we do better, but also, as you say, just the opportunity to partner with you all to reach such a large number of kids, parents, families, and to think about all the interesting research questions that one could do in terms of, understanding different risk factors, protective factors, patterns of substance use, changes across time, changes associated with different types of prevention programs or policies. I think that could, there's so much exciting space here for collaboration.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would love it. If you can tell by my excitement that this would be something that we would absolutely embrace. And we would love to be able to expand our services if we had additional support. So, really looking at preschool age and what the needs are for preschool students and families, and really looking at what are some best practices in supporting families of really young children. And also another population that we would love to work with is the postgraduates, right? So they're not always going off to college, and we find that they need a lot of supports in this, a transition out of school and creating a new way of life for them, a new structure to their day. And so, if there's anyone who's interested in working with either of those populations. While we're not currently working with them, we would love some opportunities to think creatively about how to expand our programs and services to reach them as well.
And, this is one of the things that I think is fascinating about studying substance use and mental health. I sometimes jokingly say, no one wakes up one morning to discover, oh my gosh, I've had an onset of alcohol use disorder or opioid use disorder, or even, wow, I'm suddenly anxious. Where did this come from? Usually you see these behaviors show up early in development in various forms, whether it's impulsivity that shows up early in kids or fearfulness, and that over time and in conjunction with the environmental risk factors, it can lead some kids to have problems, or others might have protective environments that reduce the likelihood that they'll have problems. And so I think that, the kind of work that you do, and really the opportunity to study kids from an early point all the way through these important transitions in their life, as you're saying, once they're leaving school, moving into emerging adulthood, that I think it just is so rich for thinking about all the kinds of ways that we can study the unfolding of risk and protection across time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things we've been looking at as well this year specifically is staff burnout. Whether that's, our clinicians and our behavioral health staff, as well as school staff, and parents, because we know how challenging it can be to balance work and home life for them. So really looking at this concept of burnout and how all of these factors contribute to, these poor choices or, negative behaviors, because everyone is so burnt out, and really looking at, how do we help support the caretakers, right? So that's something new that we've kind of been focused on this year. So that would be another area where, I am just kind of dabbling in this a little bit. I would love some research or some information about what people across the country are doing to help support the caregivers.
Yes, and as the parent of a child who really struggled with ADHD and anxiety when he was young, I can appreciate firsthand, even with all the knowledge that I had with a PhD in psychology, how challenging that can be, and how much research about, working with parents and understanding what's working or what's not working, or how we can support them, could be so important and is much needed.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always say I'm grateful that I know what's going on in schools, because otherwise I would feel very lost about understanding what's happening in schools today. And I'm grateful for that. But I think really focusing on how do we help educate the parents who are not in this field, and how can we provide them with the information and resources that they need to feel like they are aware of what to expect, or what kinds of questions to ask, or what to pay attention to. And so I think that that's important too, is how do we give them the tools that they need in the ways that we have them.
So, Sonia, I would love it if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about your path. This is something that I tend to ask everyone for the early career folks that are out there and trying to figure out what are the different ways that people end up in different careers, different departments and units. What is the pathway that led you to be the Senior Director of School and Community Programs here at Rutgers?
Great question. Great question. I originally wanted to go to law school. So, I think that shifted a bit once I worked at a law firm and didn't feel as passionate about the work comparatively to some of the internships I had had in college, working in this field as a psych major. But I think it really comes down to my first job out of college, where I worked in a school setting. I remember applying to so many jobs. I felt like getting your first job was the hardest. And I must have sent out 50 applications. And, I ended up getting a job at UMDNJ, which is who Rutgers used to be. They're a part of Rutgers used to be. It was in a school district. And I said, I've always loved working with kids, and I just need to get my first job. So let me see how this goes. And I absolutely loved it. And that was, over 20 years ago. And I have just never left. So it just landed that I absolutely loved this work. And I've spent my life working in school and clinical settings and have really embraced it. But I do think that people need to try out different things. My private practice has allowed me to work with different kinds of clients and really pinpoint who I love to work with. And while my full-time job really keeps me focused on working with children and families, my private practice, I've really felt pulled to working with the young adult population who are in transition, whether it's, on their way to college or graduating from college and transitioning into work world. And they are my favorite population to work with outside in my private practice. So but I've worked with a lot of different populations. I also do a lot of work with the Latinx populations. I've really been drawn to them. And that's really just come from trying to work with different settings, different populations. And I think that people should take risks when it comes to, trying different things to really figure out what they're passionate about. And fortunately, I'm in a place where I say, I'm not going to work, I'm just going to do something that I love. And this role allows us to really be creative, really craft programs around where the needs are. And we're not stuck in a standard approach or a standard model of providing services or programs. And that's been wonderful. It's really allowed us all to think creatively, to say, well, this inner city school needs something very different from this suburban school. And so really looking at ensuring that we are crafting a program to meet those needs has been just wonderful. I really feel like I am encouraged, to think creatively about the work that we're doing. So, mental health and working with children, it's very rewarding, can be exhausting sometimes, but very rewarding. So I guess I just kind of fell into this work with my first job and said, here's what I want to be doing.
I love that you started out talking about how you thought you wanted to be a lawyer, though, and then you kind of cast this wide net to see, okay, let's see where I get a job. I'll try it, see how it goes. And because I find that when I'm talking with college students and early career or young people, because I too love working with emerging adults, that very often now they have this idea of, I need to find my passion. I need to know what it is I'm destined to do. And, I say, well, just laying in your bed thinking about this is not going to take you to the answer. That actually you need to get out and try different things. And then you figure out, okay, I thought I wanted to do this and I really didn't like that setting, but maybe I could do something similar, in a school rather than in a community, or rather than, and you figure out what works for you. But you do that by iterating and trying things for a while and figuring out, and which pieces you like or don't like. And then, you and I were fortunate enough to stumble on something that we really loved and that has sustained us. And I really like how your work also has this very community engaged model.
Mm-hmm.
It's something obviously as a field we've moved toward, but I think, 20 years ago when I got started was not something we talked a lot about. It was very much, we have expertise. We are coming into settings to, give our expertise to you, as opposed to working with communities to better understand their needs and the expertise they bring to the table, and really then to partner with them from the Rutgers side, from the community side, to figure out how we can best help these kids, these families, these communities. And I love that it very much feels like that's the strategy you take in working with, and you, as you say, crafting your programs to the needs of each of the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge benefit to being at a place like Rutgers, is that you do have access to people doing all kinds of things. And you're just much more productive when you can partner with experts in different areas and figure out how can we all come together to expand upon the work we're already doing. And so it's been a pleasure, getting to know people in different departments and talking more. I do wish, and I know that people are working on this, I do wish there were opportunities for everyone to learn more about some of the other programs and say, how could I potentially, and I appreciate that you're putting a lot of things together to be able to do that. And I think that we need more opportunities to come together, practitioners and researchers and data collectors and community members. And that's why I love advisory boards, right? So we're creating our very first advisory board now as part of a new grant initiative. And it allows us to come together with people in all different areas to say, what are the needs? And how can we craft programs to meet these needs? And we're not just getting it from, our staff or people who work at Rutgers. We're getting it from, students. We have 2 students on the advisory board. We have faith-based organizations on the advisory board. So really saying, here, what do we need and how can we provide this information and this type of programming where the community is going to receive it? So it's so important to be able to say, how can we partner together with different organizations, different experts, and how can you pull things together in a way that's more effective, right?
Absolutely. Well, Sonia, thank you for all of the amazing work that you lead. And yes, one of the reasons that we have started this series and are creating the YouTube channel is to help raise awareness of the researchers in terms of better understanding our different clinical service providers and all the opportunities that exist for these collaborations. And we're also obviously going to be doing a series with researchers too, so that we can all learn more about one another and hopefully seed some of these new partnerships. So thank you so much for joining us today and talking all about all the programs you lead and the opportunities for researchers to partner with you. And I very much look forward to hopefully getting some of these exciting new collaborations off the ground.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see what comes next. So thank you for having me.